Thank you so much for coming to this session. So in this session, we will be talking about rebuilding bonds, nurturing relationships after a brain injury. Our goal for this session is, to also invite you to ask questions. We want this to be a helpful session to really understand the challenges of relationships after brain injury and some tips and strategies that we can offer. So my name is Cheryl Berardinelli. I am a neuropsychologist at Jefferson Moss McGee, currently in the inpatient stroke program, but I do have, I spent many, many years working in the brain injury, both in the outpatient and inpatient side, and also in the residential side. And I'm very, very pleased to introduce my co-presenter.
Bridget Kaiser.
Thank you. So for this presentation, we will cover the following. You will hear about Bridget's story of resilience. We're going to talk just a brief overview of how a brain injury can impact relationships and in what areas. We want to offer some strategies for how to nurture the relationships in your life, tips specifically for family, friends, and coworkers, what not to say to someone with a brain injury, and also the discussion about how to navigate intimacy after a brain injury. And we want to wrap this up by summarizing some general tips and takeaways.
I am Bridget. I was in a car accident in 2003. After the car accident, I was in a coma for about a month. Then I was inpatient at Moss Rehab for 5 weeks and outpatient for 2 years. My injury is on my left frontal lobe, so anyone with an injury kind of around that area, obviously it affects my speech, my memory, my coordination. I had to relearn how to walk, how to write. My mom used to bring me in those grammar school books that you initially learned how to write. She had me do writing exercise every night, even when I was in the hospital. I learned how to talk because my speech was about 1,000 times worse than it is now. I sounded garbled. I really had to learn how to enunciate again and how to kind of think about my words before I even spoke them and how they were coming out. My mom we did speech exercises, and something that was really useful for me, she got me a small hand pocket mirror, and while we went through those exercises, I would hold that mirror in front of my mouth and watch how my mouth moved to form those words. And that's why you see me make so many facial expressions, because I'm trying to form the words. And again, like I said, 5 weeks inpatient, 2 years outpatient, and here I am today, 21 years later, and I'm still learning something new every day, and you just take it as it comes, pretty much.
So after someone experiences a brain injury, many parts of their life can change, and it affects not just the person with the brain injury, but also really affects their family, their friends, and many relationships that they have. Talking about relationships and intimacy is important because these areas are often deeply affected by the injury. It never just affects one person, it affects the whole unit. And addressing these changes can help everyone involved understand what's happening so that we can all learn how to cope better with these changes. These are some of the ways that a brain injury can impact relationships. When communication styles and patterns change between two people, this can result in one or both feeling misunderstood, feeling isolated, feeling very frustrated, and it can be different in verbal ways. The way that you're able to express your words may sound different, may be harder for words to come out. You know what you want to say, but the words are just not coming out. There's like a traffic jam in the brain. It can also affect the communication non-verbally. You think about our body language, our gestures, our facial expressions. Those things the way we express those can also change. But it's not just the expression, it's also how we receive that information. So our ability to also understand verbal and nonverbal communication may feel different after a brain injury. Our emotional well-being can also change. The range of emotions that are experienced are still the same. There could still be sadness, feeling happy, feeling excited, feeling scared, but that ability to regulate may feel off. So when you feel something, it kind of goes up to 10 pretty quickly sometimes. Or it could be the opposite, where sometimes you feel like it always kind of just feels blunted, or it takes a lot to get you to feel excited about things that you used to feel excited for. And it's not just because of the neurological injury that comes with it. When you think about surviving a brain injury, this is a life-altering experience. It's an experience that many of the people in your life have not experienced. And so that kind of puts you in a different just path of experiences and community that's not familiar to many of the folks in your life. And if they have not really had the opportunity to learn about brain injury, there's a lot that they don't understand. So they may have a harder time really even appreciating the emotional journey and experiences that you've had to get to be where you are today. There are also physical changes, the sensory, right? So what we can hear, smell, taste, our vision, some of those things may change. And if you think about in a context of like a physical relationship, there's so much sensory involved. Also the mobility may also change, the balance, coordination, libido, so the energy, the interest may change. Sometimes it can increase, sometimes it can get lower after a brain injury. For men, there might be changes in erectile functioning. It may be difficult to keep one or to sustain. And then for women, there might also be changes in the menstrual cycle. It may be less regular. You may go through months without having a period. And so all of those things can happen after a brain injury. And then the social and environmental. You have to put a big, long pause in your life after a brain injury. And when you start to rejoin the community, you might find that your timeline is now a little different from your friends or from some of your colleagues. And there may also be a lot of negotiation now of the roles within the family, whether it's between couples, between siblings, between a parent and an adult child. And whenever you ask any dynamic to change a role, there has to be some negotiation, because maybe one person used to be the one working outside the home, but maybe now because of transportation barriers, or maybe now they're spending a whole lot more time going to therapies and appointments, they decided that, okay, why don't we change the roles? But that means some of the roles that your partner may be doing, you may now be expected to do them. So really kind of all the assignment of responsibilities have to be communicated between everyone involved. And then it can also cause some more financial strain because of the medical bills may really start to increase. The income may change after brain injury. And then there could also be changes in cognition. So things like memory, attention, how much time it takes to process information, being able to manage your time, being able to plan appointments, and being able to also figure out like multitasking, right? If you want to be able to do X, Y, and Z, maybe your partner or your parent was good at doing that before, but now you want to change some of that roles, and you're being asked to do something that maybe was not really something you were doing before. So now you have to learn this new thing. And on top of that, your ability to do that may be a little different from before.
Sorry, we're like switching back and forth. We'll get this down by the end. So, we did that right. So the biggest thing I think for me, and whether it's with my husband, and I've been married 15 years, so navigating that took some time. Or with friends, like I have a friend here with me today, and I'm able to be very open with him, but I don't find that with all friends because they aren't wanting to really listen. They kind of have their own narrative, but open communication with all, whether they want to hear or not. I tend to be very blunt, and I'm like, this is what it is, this is what I think. And some people love that about me, some people hate that about me. And just touch on what Cheryl said, like your different facial expressions. I get accused of having resting bitch face very, very often. And it's not that I don't want to talk to people. I'm always thinking, there's always a million things going through my head, and I don't always have the way to get them out, like, effectively. So I just tend to be very blunt, and some people don't like that. And you do have those friends, and I've had my injury for 21 years now, and you learn how to find those people, because the other people that don't understand or want to understand, you don't need in your life as much. But the people who practice patience and understanding with me and let me form my thoughts in my head, then form them in my mouth, then actually get them out, they're the people who are worthwhile to me having around in my life. And you gotta have realistic expectations of people, I find, because they may be dealing with something you have absolutely no idea about. And just like they don't know about what you're dealing with, you gotta give that courtesy to other people.
It's really important to focus on strengths. It's very important to focus on strengths. We're not trying to sugarcoat this process. It can be very challenging, right, for the person going through the experience of surviving a brain injury, but also really for family and friends. We're trying to be supportive, we're trying to understand, but to a degree, it's always going to be an outsider experience for us, right? Because we have not experienced like what Bridget, you've gone through. I've worked in this industry for a while, working with folks with TBI, but do I really know what it's like to live with a brain injury? No, I don't. I have an academic understanding of it, but the lived experience, and that's why that open communication is so important.
And that's where also where support groups.
Yeah, and that's one of the.
Are the same.
Exactly, for both support groups for survivors of brain injury and also for family members, to also really hear what that looks like day to day, the challenges from the moment you wake up to when you go to bed, things that we take for granted, that for Bridget, sometimes that feels like climbing a mountain. And so celebrating those small victories is so important in a relationship, even though sometimes in our head, like, but I really needed you to take the kids to school on time and then come home and make lunch and get dinner ready, because that's what I was doing every day, for however many years we were married. But that may not be a realistic expectation, because not just because of the brain injury, maybe even before the brain injury, that was just not a strength of your partner. They just have a hard time getting anything on time, or they really don't enjoy cooking. But when you really see the efforts that are being put in or the changes that they're making, even if you recognize those, right, they can't read your mind. They don't know that you're noticing it. They don't know that you're appreciating. You have to let them know. You have to let them know that you're noticing it and that you appreciate it. Celebrate those small victories. And empathy and compassion. It's so important to remember that everybody is doing their best. Kindness can go a long way. Really imagine what it has been like for the person that you're supporting. But it also goes both ways, right? And also understanding what it's like for your husband, on the challenges that you both have had to navigate.
Like, he goes and works 10-hour day, and then we also have our own business. When he comes home from his 10-hour day, spends another 3 to 4 hours that night doing our own business. That's a lot. I have to be understanding of him as well.
By the way, if you have any questions for Bridget or for me, anytime feel
Yeah,
free to
absolutely.
Um, and we also recognize we're all humans. We all have the emotion of getting frustrated and getting irritated and sometimes just losing our temper. That's being human. And so don't also be overly harsh on yourself when you get those moments when you're yelling and raising your voice at your parents who they've been trying to be so supportive, but today you just kind of lost it. Apologize later, right? And then maybe you can talk about, I'm really sorry that I lost my temper. I was just really frustrated about this, but I wonder moving forward, this is really important for me, and I think the demand being placed on me was just a little too overwhelming. In the future, where can we meet in the middle? And it's important to just give yourself that space and really just try to come from a place of understanding that everyone is doing the best that they can. And lastly, Bridget talked about this, really consider seeking professional help. There are so many resources out there. Bridget mentioned support groups for survivors, support groups for family members. There are counselors and therapists specific to some of the needs that you may be interested in learning about.
And if you do go the therapy route, go with someone who they're not necessarily versed in brain injury and the effects of that, but they're versed in trauma. Because any kind of trauma is going to adjust the way you perceive things. You want them versed in trauma. So they have an idea of why you're reacting this way and where you're coming from, but they can also help explain to you your partner who's hasn't been through trauma is perceiving the way you're acting.
So we want to talk about some tips for family, friends, and colleagues. Number one, learn about brain injury. You can read up on this, right, from books, literature, coming to conferences like this, because it's, in one of the messages is it's not a defining thing, right? Like
It's not.
having a brain injury is one of many parts of Bridget.
It's part of it.
But it was a big part of your life too,
Yeah.
in a way. And so it's so important to understand, and if you're trying to get to know a new friend or someone that you meet, you want to pursue romantically, and you find out what they do for work. And if it's something that you're totally unfamiliar with, you didn't even know such a job exists, you would start Googling it, right? Like to find out, what does that even mean? And what kind of work do they do? Do they work with people? Do they work with computers? But you just try to understand what it is, right? It's the same for having a brain injury. What does that mean? Because each brain injury could also mean very different things for the person. So it's helpful to learn as much as you can so that you even just have an idea, a foundation of what the differences may be. But
And definitely, if and when a person does learn about it, definitely encourage them to ask questions.
yes, thank you, because I was about whatever you read, that's helpful, but don't assume that the person that's in your life would have all of those things, right? This is Bridget's favorite. Do not rush to do things for them. The journey of recovery from brain injury is a lot. It's like Olympics, right? It's like training for the Olympics. But every day when they're home, and the therapist, like, we're always encouraging them to pursue these day-to-day opportunities where they can get to practice a little bit more, learn to do more things for themselves. When we rush to do things for them, even though we think we're being helpful, we're actually taking that opportunity away from them in that moment.
My thinking process is much slower. Like, people think of a solution in a matter of seconds. It takes me a minute to get there. I'll get there eventually, but it just takes me a minute longer.
Yeah. And it's also kind of insulting, like, I know you can do it, so why would I rush to do it for Bridget when I know she can do it? And be encouraging, there's gonna be rough days, there are gonna be days when you're just so tired from trying all the time. Like, this used to be easy. It used to take me an hour. Now it's taking me 3 hours to do this. I don't want to do all of these things that I usually do because I'm just exhausted. And so that a little encouragement can go a long way, from family members and friends.
And when a person with brain injury gets stuck, my husband's pretty good at this. instead of rushing to do it for me, we talked about the difficulty I'm having. I have an idea in my head what I want to do, but I'm having trouble completing it. I can't think of the words. I'm having trouble actually putting it into action, or he'll help me expand on my idea of what I can do.
And offer help and support when needed. So we do want them, to have the opportunity to do things for themselves, not rush to do things, but we also want to be available to provide that support and help when they need it and when they ask for it. Modify the environment. So keep in mind, after a brain injury, there could be increased sensitivity to things like light, noise, clutter. So for example, like if you want to invite your friend out, oh, come on in. If you want to invite your friend out to dinner, kind of be mindful of those things, ask your friend, this place that we're thinking about, they have live music and it can get really loud, or they have like those strobing lights. Just ask your friend if that's something that would be comfortable for them, or will that cause them a headache?
And if it's not comfortable for them, give them the grace to get out of this situation that they feel they need to. Like, just give an example. When I first met my husband, I'm a lot better with it now. But we would go out to dinner, and if a restaurant was too noisy, I would just look at him with like doe eyes, be like, I gotta get out of here. I cannot handle it. So we would leave the restaurant without even eating. Or a sooner example was this past summer, I was at Jersey Shore for a bachelorette party. Well, my friends wanted to go this far with live music, really, really loud. I got to the door, I looked at my friend, and I was like, I can't do this. So I Ubered back to the place we were staying. I was perfectly happy. They had a good time. I said, I just can't do it. And they understood. They didn't make me feel bad for leaving.
And I think that's the key. No guilt tripping, and don't overinterpret. If your friend or your partner is kind of more quiet than usual, don't assume that they're just miserable in your company. It may not be you. It's really maybe the environment. And give them the courtesy of letting them know ahead of time if the place, the venue is going to have loud music or like a lot of light, so that if they really, really want to go still, like, if it's an artist that you still really want to hear, but you can prepare like headphones or exactly. So those are just some of those things you want to be mindful of. Look out for each other. So if you're going out, bachelorette party, if you know that your friend has had a brain injury, kind of like just make sure that they really have a ride home and that their ride has arrived. Don't just assume that they're going to be okay and kind of figure things out, because sometimes, a lot of the times they're okay doing it, but if it's late at night, sometimes just kind of a place that's less familiar, maybe they don't usually stay up this late, so now they're very fatigued, and so their ability to even just pay attention and remember things and be organized is further compromised because now they're tired, and they're just exhausted, and it's like a new situation. Don't just assume that they're gonna be okay if you leave them by themselves. Just kind of prepare for those things. And then if you're never sure what's okay to do or what to say or what to do to help them, just ask. It's okay to ask.
Absolutely. Just ask me what I need help with. And that kind of brings me back to what I wanted to add. When you said to offer help and support when needed, don't ask what kind of help do they need. Don't just rush to get it all done for them, because there's satisfaction that comes when you do things for yourself, but maybe you can't do it mentally or physically. You need some help. I know I need help with cleaning the house physically. I can't do certain things. And you need someone that is available to help, but definitely offer your help, but also be clear when you are available to help. Because it's hard when you're just expecting the help and it doesn't come. But if I know when you're able to help me, I can help schedule that in my timeline.
What not to say to someone with a brain injury?
There are so many things. But you look normal. Yeah, I'm sitting here and not moving. All you can hear is my voice. That doesn't sound exactly normal, but I personally think I'm very put together. Like, you look normal. Well, I just wanted, what exactly does normal look like? That one makes me so mad.
Thank you.
I
I had to. Nobody took the bait. So
He's nodding his head.
Your memory, when someone points out how good your memory is, I just want to go. I get very blunt. I tell people now, I'm like, yeah, well, I got my head smashed in by a truck. So, what do you want? I just want to be like, no shit. You have no idea what I went through.
And if I can just add to that too, I think the part that's in someone who doesn't have a brain injury, when I hear someone say that to, someone, not just brain injury, but dementia, like, oh, but your memory's so bad, or like, first of all, just because, when we talk about memory, there's so many aspects of memory. Memory is not a blanket one and all kind of term, right? So there's immediate memory, there's delayed memory, there's autobiographical memory, there's procedural memory. There's so many parts of the memory. There might be some things that Bridget may not be able to remember, but
I
there are
tell
also
you,
many,
some
many
that
things
happened
that you can remember.
when I was a kid, like
Yeah.
it was yesterday.
Yeah, so kind of don't assume that because they say, oh yeah, my memory's been affected from the brain injury, don't assume that their memory is all bad all the time entirely.
The hardest thing for me to know is when someone says, but you could do this yesterday. Yesterday was a whole different day. And I'm frustrated with myself because I say that to myself. I could do this yesterday. Why am I having problems today? You have to be forgiving of yourself and just say to someone, well, today is a different day. I can't do it today. There may be things happening that day that you're having a tough time with. When someone just goes and does it for you because you're taking too long. I do things a little slower. I have to, so I understand I don't miss something. And perhaps the biggest one is when people get frustrated with me, and I understand that frustration because I'm frustrated with myself every day. But when they tell me, like I said, my accident was 21 years ago. When someone thinks, oh, well, it was 21 years ago, stop using your TBI as an excuse. My TBI isn't going anywhere. It's going to affect me the rest of my life. And people just don't understand that sometimes and frustrates me. Or they tell me, oh, you speed better by now because it's been so long.
So we want to switch to talking about the intimacy aspects in a relationship after a brain injury.
Oh, is it my turn again?
Yes.
Oh.
So a very cute boy meets girl story.
So this is my husband, Matt, who's not here with me today. He's trying to shoot an elk in Idaho. Go figure. So we met in 2006. We met on MySpace, which beats me a little bit. We talked on the computer for a couple months. Then we finally met in person. At that point, I just started driving again. It was 3 years after my accident. I just started driving again, so I met him. I drove myself and met him in a public place, and it was actually the place I used to work at, so I knew everyone there. I was comfortable with everyone there, and then we moved in together, and then we eventually got married in 2009. Forget that date. About 2021 or 22, we were having communication issues because we both communicate very differently, and we needed some help in that area, so we sought out some couples counseling, and that's why I pointed out earlier, if you do seek out a counselor, get someone that is familiar in trauma, because the way trauma affects your life and the way you perceive things is very different from someone who hasn't experienced it. And we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary a couple weeks ago.
That's right. Okay. It's like- So one of I guess the things that we want to highlight when we're talking about intimacy is first, how do we even define intimacy? Because I think, traditionally there's a connotation that intimacy is sexual, it's physical. Well, does it always have to be? Right? Because intimacy can really mean many different things. And as a couple, you can redefine what this means for you and how, what does it need to mean for it to work in the context of your relationship. To really open that conversation between you and your partner, that perhaps intimacy, while very active in the recovery, could mean a lot of non-sexual stuff, right? Really just focusing on the emotional intimacy again, focusing on that relationship, that emotional closeness and that bond. It could still be physical, but not sexual. It could mean a lot of hand holding, could mean a lot of just sitting next to each other very closely on the couch and holding hands throughout watching an entire show.
For me and my husband, it's DVRing a certain TV show and only watching it when we're together. And that's just what we do.
And then also tackle together physical challenges that may present itself. This is also when, really working with the PTs and the OTs and even the doctors that you have in your team could be helpful. So if it's something that medication could help, for example, with the erectile functioning or, some of the other medications that you feel like are affecting your sex drive, really have that conversation with your doctor. Don't just stop the medications for that reason. But also the OTs and the PTs, they can really help problem solve to come up with different positioning that can reduce the pain, that can reduce spasms, or they can also help suggest maybe use, some pillows, or there are also a lot of websites actually that are really sex positive. Like if you Google, what are some of the terms, like sex mobility aids, for example. There's a lot of literature out there and resources. There are also some shops that are more sex positive and disability affirming in their approach, that you can also approach them and ask them for just their thoughts. So they're much more expert than I am, at least for what products that they have out there, and they can be really mindful of what products are adaptive. So just kind of know that that's an avenue that you can look into. And then take it slow. No, don't rush, right? So like what Bridget was saying, sometimes just spend the whole time watching a show together. Really take that pressure off. If it eventually gets there, great. If not, that's okay. Because sometimes the performance itself or the pressure that you might put on yourselves as a couple can be in and of itself so stressful that it gets in the way. If you take that pressure off, we really just want to be together as a couple. We really just want, You know, at the end of the bottom of this is there's true love between two people. And you want to be able to express that love in however way that is. It could be cooking dinner. It could be walking together. It could be sitting outside.
My husband has started to help me in the kitchen.
He started helping you in the kitchen.
Because he
That's awesome.
knows
That's your language of love.
I call him my sous chef.
Oh. But yes, it's trying to figure out really, you know, what your partner's language of love is. It's not always, it doesn't have to be always one thing. It could even be words of affirmation. But it's really thinking of intimacy as just one other way that you continue to express how you love this person, right? And so, but there are many, many ways that you can do that. And this is one of them. And if this is something that, you know, for you, this is really important, then let's work together in supporting each other and making this fun and making this enjoyable and pleasurable and not stressful or painful. So I already talked about the medical consultation. I just want to bring your attention to ASECT. I think it stands for Academy of American Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. But it's an organization where they have professionals who are trained in providing that support. They have sex therapists, they have sex educators. So they have a website, and again, you can read up resources, literature, other, in your local communities, they might have connections there. If this is something that you're really interested in finding out more, that's one resource. Schedule time together and be intentional in really focusing and prioritizing this relationship. Like what Bridget said, we like this show, but we would only watch it when we can watch it together. And just because, if you live together, sometimes it's easy to take for granted that you're going to be together all the time. But you can be in the same address, in the same house, on the same floor, in the same room, but really not together, right? And so finding that time to really schedule and say, we're really going to spend time together, right? We're not just going to be home together, but we're going to do something together. And then we also want to include practicing safe sex still. After a brain injury, your body can be more just vulnerable to some infections because maybe of some of the medications that you're taking and other other health conditions that developed, along with what caused the injury. And so keep that in mind also, that it's important to still practice safe sex. And then lastly, find ways to laugh together, right? So even when you're trying to figure out each other's bodies, what position works without causing pain, or, just to make it fun. Be able to laugh when it's not working out.
And be able to laugh at yourself.
Yeah. Like, sometimes if your PT or your OT, they're practicing with you some positioning that works. And, for example, we see it more in strokes where one side could be weaker, and so you may have reduced sensation. Their suggestion would be that you lie on that side, so then the unaffected side is kind of the one where you can feel more sensation that can, be more involved in the activity. But you can try those things, and then we've heard from some couples that they tried whatever positioning their therapist suggested, and it was a disaster, right? Like they were falling off the bed, or it just wasn't working. They couldn't find body parts that they thought were going to be there. But then just laugh about it. It's okay, because sometimes, the therapist, they'll tell you what they read about or what worked for other folks, but it may not work for you. So
yeah, it's like you were saying, like being book learned about it is very, very different than being learned about it.
Like explore together, learn together, be forgiving of each other, be tolerant. And again, I think, the first thing that you said about the open communication, just create an atmosphere where you and your partner can really feel like it's okay to share an opinion, even if it's the worst idea ever, but you feel safe expressing it. But also, feel safe in saying, no, I don't like this at all.
Right.
No, this hurts. And that be respectful of hearing those boundaries too. So some tips and takeaway. Remember that recovery is an ongoing process. When you were showing the slide of your story with Matt, I noticed that you guys started couples counseling 12 years into your marriage.
Yeah.
So just kind of keep that in mind, right? Like in every relationship, there are different seasons, we all grow as a person, and in your
And it's
situation,
not just what you have done and grown and gone through. It's also what he has done and gone
that's
through.
right, yeah. Because in some areas you grow kind of in the same direction, and there might be some aspects of your life where you kind of grow in different ways. And you and Matt met after your brain injury.
3 years after.
Yeah. And, I'm curious for couples who were together before the brain injury
I know.
and how
That's
they navigate.
gotta
Yeah.
be-
And so there might
This
be
is the only
times.
way Matt knows me. He's like, I only know you was crazy.
But you just kind of keep in mind that the counseling is not like, oh, we've done it before, so we're done. It can be in the different seasons of your life as a couple, right? Because maybe in the beginning, there was a certain issue, you needed to learn how to understand the brain injury, or you needed to just understand some things, and then you figure it out, it works. Then several years later, you're kind of changed somewhat, because maybe now you have different priorities in life, different responsibilities, and now you're not really sure how to communicate again, because now you kind of have different preferences. So that may be another time to try the counselor again, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed from before. It just means you're in a different time in your life. Smaller changes add up to make a big difference. So again, like, celebrate those small victories. When you think of like the people who run marathons, they don't start out running, how many miles is a marathon? 26? They don't start out running 26 miles the first week that they start training, right? Most of them can probably even do like 5K right away. They start with just, you know what, we're just gonna, if anybody has done those Couch to 5K apps, they even just make you run like 1 minute run and then 1 minute walk. And if you can get to the 1 minute, that you do it for a few days, and then they'll go to like a 1.5 minute run and then like 3 minute walk. So that's how you get there, right? So just remember that you don't have to have the expectation that, oh, well, this is what we've read, that, like we heard stories of Bridget after how many years, and she's married, she has a job, she's driving. How come that's not the same for me?
Like,
different, right?
celebrating the small victories. I tend to go through depression and depressive episodes where I just won't do anything. I'll just sit there on the couch like, oh, my husband goes to work, comes home, asks me about my day, how was my day, and I'm just like, it's like, what you do? I'm like, nothing. So anytime I'm going through one of those episodes, he'll ask me about my day, ask me what I did. If he knows I'm in that stage, I can say, oh, I did a load of laundry today. That becomes like the biggest deal in the world. He is so happy I did a load of laundry that day. When there's a million other things that I could have done that maybe I should have done, but I did that one load of laundry. I did something. And he makes me feel good about doing that one load of laundry.
Excellent. Find your people. Like, find the people that you want in your village.
Exactly, I mentioned that earlier. Yeah. Like, people who want to understand you and ask you questions and care about what you're thinking and how you're feeling. They're just, make them your people.
And the support group, it's not just about the quantity, right? It's about the quality of the people in your support
Absolutely.
group. Yeah. And communication is key. I feel like that's been a theme throughout.
Yeah.
It's normal to feel nervous. I think, in general, right? Like, for most folks, talking about things like intimacy, sex,
Talk about yourself
it's
in
awkward.
general.
Oh yeah, and talking about yourself in general, it's awkward. It makes us all feel nervous. So it's okay if you feel that way. Like, don't think that you're doing something wrong or that you're doing what you've read in the books. It's very normal to feel nervous and awkward. It is helpful to ask questions even to your doctors. Sometimes the doctors may not always initiate that conversation, but if you have questions about it, if you're wondering, is this medication like causing some side effects where I don't feel interest or maybe too much interest, please bring it up. Just because sometimes the providers are not initiating that conversation, it doesn't mean that they don't think that's important. Sometimes we wait for folks to take the lead because we may not always know if that's something that's even important to you. But please know that you do have permission to ask these questions. And use community resources. Bridget talked about the support groups, peer mentoring. There are also camps and conferences. I know like the Moss Rehab, we have, over the summer, we have the Camp Independence. That's a wonderful resource. It's for, folks who've had brain injury and it's a great time to really get to know other peers. Is it in person?
Like, I've never been there, but like, I used to go to the clubhouse, and a lot of people at the clubhouse went.
That's
the
what I was
clubhouse.
trying to think of, that support group I
Yeah.
mentioned was at the clubhouse.
Yeah,
I
a lot of people from the clubhouse went.
Thank you, I couldn't think of what it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Most
cancer
are
independence
clubhouse.
isn't just brain injury, it's all types of disorders.
Oh, okay. That's good. And then couples therapy.
I'm a big advocate for that, and we're not doing it at the moment, but we may be back in it because new things could come up. And sometimes you just need that third impartial party to help you navigate through a tough situation.
And like you guys, like she said, you have a counselor who's familiar with brain injury,
Not so much traumatic brain injury, but
trauma and.
the way trauma can affect you.
Okay. Because other counseling is pointless. I don't want to say pointless, but pointless.
I agree, it's not so much pointless, but
That's pretty pointless.
they're like, well, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't understand
Yeah, exactly.
the flux.
And therapy in kind of a weird way feels a little bit like dating. Sometimes you
gotta
have to
find the
try
right
several therapists to find the
Absolutely.
right one.
Before we found the counselor, we went through like three.
Yeah, because you can get an appointment with the most sought after therapist out there. Maybe he's won awards left and right. But if there is no connection between you and that therapist, where there's no what we call therapeutic alliance, that's not gonna feel effective to you. But if you find a therapist who you feel like they really get you, they really seem invested in knowing you and helping you, that's gonna be the therapist who can make the most impact. Because even
So
if they're
my
not,
therapist was in his free time when he wasn't doing the counseling, was a drummer in a punk
a
band.
drum,
And
maybe that's how
I
you
really
connected, yeah.
connected with that.
and even if they don't have that specialty in brain injury, if they really are invested in understanding you and helping you, I guarantee you they will in their own time read up on brain injury and learn more about it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, kind of the hallmark of the right therapist for you, when they really take the time to understand what's going on in your life. And we wanted to include this because, Bridget met Matt in the online space. Whether it's through screens or face-to-face, the key is to always nurture connections with patience, understanding, love, and care. Right? We feel like as long as those elements are there, it's not always going to be peachy, it's not always going to be easy, but you're going to figure out how to make it work somehow. So we're open to questions,
Absolutely.
and we do have resources and references here. I do have a question for Bridget.
Yeah.
When you and Matt met on MySpace, how soon did you let him know about your brain injury?
Well, he kind of knew about him. Took him 2 years to connect that I was the girl they were talking about. I was a bartender at a restaurant, and he became a regular at this bar right after my accident. some of my regulars would come in and ask about me, and she's still in a coma, she's not doing too good. But he had heard about me before he even met me.
You were like the really cool celebrity.
I was.
And then when it connected, he was like, I gotta make this work.
Well, it took him 2 years, so we were already together for 2 years. But when I say when we met, first time met him in a public place where I used to work, that's where he heard about me. So I told him about the brain injury pretty much right away. I was like, I went through this is, and it didn't affect him at all. Maybe that, cause he didn't see me in person at first, I'm not sure, because I really hobbled worse than I hobble now. I've gotten better with that. The way I would speak, it was very hard to understand me. I don't know. Any more questions?
Because that's one of the questions that I often hear from the folks that I work with is, when they want to really get into the dating scene, but there's always a question of, but
Even with friends, I pretty much, Dan, I told you.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah.
Dan is Bridget's friend, if you're wondering what the context.
We met actually going to an amusement park. She said we were at Six Flags, and
Dan wants to go with me to amusement parks all over, because when I go to an amusement park, I use a wheelchair and I get on everything.
she went, "You want to stick with me? I can get us out in front of these lines." I said, "All right, let's go." So.
But sometimes that's the question that they have is, how do I tell them right away,
I pretty much do. Is that it?
Does
Anyone else? No? Any comments? Yeah?
Thank you so much for really such wonderful information. One of the things that I think about is that sort of the impact on suggestions or strategies for like wanting to follow up on a conversation, if that's an issue for you in terms of memory. I don't know that it is.
What do you mean?
So for example, if you know someone has a birthday coming up, but it's sometimes hard to remember, or if you know that somebody has a doctor's appointment and you want to follow up and ask them how the appointment went. As I get older, I find that I have to write those things on my calendar.
Oh, I live by the calendar app on my phone. I live by that. If it's not on my phone, I don't know. And I love the app on my phone, because I can go back. I want to know something that happened 2 years ago. It's on my calendar. I can go back and look at it.
Or just to sort of follow up with what you were saying, I've certainly talked with people who say one of the challenges in a relationship is that if they don't remember the last conversation they had with that person, and then they see them again, it can make communication difficult. I don't know if you experienced that or if you have any ideas about that. Following up on just something that you guys have been talking about.
I make a joke out of the brain injury, cause what else am I gonna do with it? I laugh, I make a joke about it and laugh about it. Otherwise, I'll be miserable the whole time. I'll be like, well, I have a brain injury. I don't remember exactly. Refresh my memory. And Dan can tell you, I do it all the time. I have a brain injury. What do you want from me?
We go to trivia once a week, and there'll be times where we'll be like, we've heard this question before. And sometimes she's like, oh, it was this. And other times we'll both look at each other and go, I have no idea.
I know someone who actually keeps a little conversation diary.
Oh.
So, and he was dating and meeting various women, and not all at the same time. After he would leave a date, he'd make some notes. And then when he went to call her again, he could refer to something we had talked
Take a refresher. his own low refresher and maybe bring something up and she can go into more detail.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
And if I just kind of came to me, like if you're not into writing, and if your date gives you permission, take pictures and then you can add on the notes.
All right.
Voice
If,
recording.
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say there's a voice memo app on most phones now have that voice memo that you can use.
And actually, I've never tried this, but you know, in the Google Calendar, can you attach photos there? I don't know. So like if you just have a
Not
date,
sure.
attach it to that calendar event, so you even remember the name and the face of the date, and then the notes about that person.
I have no financial interest in this, but there is an app called Day One, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
that's what it's
yeah.
called.
That's like a
Where
journaling
it
app.
allows you can put a picture, it is a calendar, because every day you open it up, you can put pictures in there, you can write text in there. And it allows you to have that ongoing record of, especially if taking pictures is a good strategy for somebody.
Because when you're first meeting someone, they expect you to be paying attention to what they're saying and show some interest in what they've talked about. And if you don't remember it the second time you meet them, it's hard to make a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a humorous but compensatory strategy of someone who survived a brain injury, single, actively dating, not interested in any long-term commitment. So we'd go on a lot of dates and really had trouble remembering the names of the person that he's with, even during intimate acts. So to avoid that, he just now calls everybody baby. So he won't say the wrong name.
There you go.
I mean, I actually did that for a while.
You were not the person I was
It wasn't me,
talking about.
I know, I was like, I don't know her. I did that for a while, but like, then it became kind of like second nature to where like, it became my go-to intimate name was baby. It wasn't because I couldn't remember your name, it was because I wanted to call you baby.
Yeah.
And then, like, eventually, women started realizing that they're baby just like the rest of them, and like they don't like that. Like my current wife, don't like that. And like I like beg her, I'm like, hey, please just call me baby. She's like, call me that. Also, I was gonna say, like earlier, one of the things you were talking about was like about the you were saying about telling people that you meet like how long you have to wait before you disclose that information. I mean, I don't want to say that I'm like going to tell you a rule, but like for me, it took some trial and error for me to just get to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell people right away.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're gonna find out eventually.
I just put it out there.
Yeah, just put it out there because like
Take it
if
for
they
what it
if they turn away, then they were not meant to be in your
Right.
life. And that's fine. It's kind of a harsh thing to think about. They cut and dry like that, but it's easier for you mentally.
Very, very blunt.
Less frustrating to just say, look, I'm just gonna tell them.
Yeah.
And if they're still,
Right now,
if they
they're
stick
at
around,
peace.
then I'll give them a
Feel okay.
chance. If they run for the hills, then I wait by.
Right? Anybody else? Think that's it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, you can reach out to Bridget or myself.
Did you put the O in
Yes.
short is a zero?
That's on here.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
There are also handouts that you can bring home with you.
Thank you.